Welcome to Maxill's Reality Corner. Michelle and Nicole, we're talking about manufacturer's instructions for use, aka MIFUs. Looking at the what, when, where, and how. What is a MIFU? A manufacturer's instructions for use is a piece of paper, a form, instructions given by each manufacturer for equipment and instruments. But when we talk about MIFUs here today and in reference to infection control, we're only looking for MIFUs that are related to how an instrument is sterilized, time, temperature, pressure. If it's equipment related to infection control, how is it disinfected on the outside, say a sterilizer? How does it operate? So it's a gathering of that data so you know specifically what the manufacturer has intended for that instrument or for that equipment. There is also what a MIFU is not.
What a MIFU is not. It's not an SDS. SDS sheets come with your products, your disposables. MIFUs are not required for disposables or SDSs. The difference between an SDS and a MIFU is that SDS comes with your products. It tells you what you use to mix it, how to store it. And MIFUs tells you how to sterilize your equipment, how to properly maintain your equipment and your instruments.
Where would you use a MIFU? It actually starts first, we're going to say, when the product arrives to the office, where before using the instrument, before using the equipment, the machine, we have to find out exactly what the intended use was for the item. If it's going to be used intraorally, obviously it needs to be sterilized first. So what is the sterilization parameter? So what is the time, temperature, and pressure? Now where would you get that MIFU? As we're saying, it starts at the beginning. As orders are coming in, orders are being opened, these package inserts actually do need to be saved. So it would be a matter of an office organizing a bin, an envelope, a drawer, some sort of retrieving system that these are not missed, these are not thrown out. Because not every manufacturer will have them listed on their website, then it becomes a chore to hunt those down. Along with that, when we're opening up our packages, there's a good chance you're going to have your safety data sheet in there as well. So you're kind of doing a dual role, doing yourself a favor by collecting these ahead of time. Who would they go to? They would go to the infection control officer to then decipher, maybe we already have that MIFU. No, it's a new MIFU. So somebody has to take charge of the organization part, we would say. And I do believe that Nicole would have some comments on basically when it's needed and where, how and where you would use it.
So a MIFU is needed for every instrument, piece of equipment, anything that you would need to tell you how to sterilize, the parameters of time, temperature, and pressure. Our regulations to date state that if you don't have a MIFU for your instruments, whether it be resto, hygiene, exam, or your sterilizers, you're not supposed to be using it in a dental practice today. So guaranteed that if you had public health, for example, come in and ask to see your MIFU for your M11, for example, and you don't have it, that is going to be a representation for public health that you don't know the parameters of what you're supposed to be using your autoclave for.
And then the question could be, how many MIFUs will you collect? It's a big task. You're collecting for anything that you're using intraorally. So if something is going to be sterilized, it could even be something as small as a spatula as well that's used for mixing. That obviously will somehow be contaminated if you're using Spalding's classification. And that's where it can become a little bit tricky. If some of our instruments are maybe a little bit older, but still in great shape, where's the MIFU for something like that? So that's where the manufacturer plays a large role, and we can contact the manufacturers to get the MIFUs. In our research that Nicole and I have done, there are not many that will have that posted on their website. They'll have the safety data sheets, but not necessarily all the MIFUs. So we're looking at a task, absolutely. We're not looking at just the task of gathering the MIFU, but going through your inventory, making a list, maybe breaking it down by department. So if you leave the task to one person, that's a lot to do, but maybe you're assigning the task. Somebody take on the ortho, take on the surgery, take on the resto, take on the hygiene. Within a matter of a month, I would say, perhaps you have it done. But then what you'll probably notice, there'll be some items that are kind of trickling along that you don't have a MIFU. And Nicole does more of going into the offices, open up all the drawers, and sometimes it's interesting what you'll find.
They're very antique. Some of the offices have passed down from associate or principal practice and retired, that those instruments are still in use. It is sometimes a challenge to find those MIFUs, so you kind of have to go behind the scenes, kind of find your way through some Google. If you want some help, Maxill is a great opportunity to do your MIFUs for you, MIFU libraries. With having said that, they're all going to be paper forms typically, sometimes they're digital, but you have to retain your MIFUs for 10 years. So keep in mind, when you do scan it, it can be shredded, but as long as your computer's backed up on a regular basis. Don't take the chance to have shredded your MIFU and it not be downloaded properly if you decide to go to digital. But again, all your MIFUs, again, need to be retained for 10 years.
And we started this project, first it was a project here at Maxill, as Nicole and I would get many requests for manufacturer's instructions for use. So we realized quickly that it was a gap, we can say, that needed to be filled, and we're actually offering that service. So we've been working for the last 2 years gathering a library of MIFUs, not just Maxill products, everything and anything that is related to infection control for obviously the sterilization piece. As you were calling us and asking for assistance, we were taking notes of what these items were, and we've been saving them. So we've built up an extensive library, which is quite phenomenal to be able to help anybody who needs that assistance. And a lot of our customers that come our way asking for that are beyond thrilled and relieved that the task is being able to be handed off. It's time consuming, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of searching, there's a lot of calling manufacturers, waiting weeks for a response. So we could see why a central, I'm going to call it a central library, would certainly be helpful. And I'll let Nicole explain a little bit how you would access this MIFU library.
So on our website we have actually a Maxill product page that has all of our Maxill manufacturer's instructions for use. But outside of that, outside of Henry Schein's, Patterson's, St. Clair's, Banco's, all the other dental supply companies, we have put together a complete library. For those offices that may not have an IPAC manual, we here at Maxill can design an IPAC manual specific to your practice. That is all your policies and procedures, all of your equipment, all your instruments, but then we would also have a complete up-to-date manufacturer's instructions for use library specific to your practice, that we would spend a couple hours in your practice going through your drawers, gathering a list of all your instruments, a list of all your equipment from the lab into the sterile bay, putting that together and then researching with our IPAC team here at Maxill and finding out all the MIFUs for you, downloading everything, giving you a paper form as well as a USB stick, so that maybe 6 weeks, 6 months you change out equipment, you change out your instruments, we will update that for you. So if you go to our Maxill website, there is an IPAC page. You can go on there, click on there, and I'd be happy to help you out.
And I think the key element as well that Nicole just mentioned is tailored. So it'd be one thing to just hand over a MIFU library, which often we're asked, but then that other task attached with it is how do you sort through what you have and don't have. So when we talk about going in and gathering this data, we're taking down model numbers, serial numbers. Now the other nice thing about that is you now have a whole inventory of everything that's in your office. So these are always tasks that nobody has time for. So who has the time to go write down everything that is used for sterilization? But again, as we were stating earlier, if you don't have this from regulatory bodies, from public health, it's an issue, and it's not a, oh, we'll come back until you've got this list. It's a, no, we're closing your doors, because in fine print, if you were to go back and read what it says, we cannot use an instrument or equipment unless we actually have that piece of paper in place that says what that sterilization parameter is. So it is maybe more of a hidden issue, right? A hidden problem than I think we realize. And we get a lot of the phone calls, the SOS phone calls, where offices will say, public health is coming tomorrow. And, or it's the colleges that are coming in for a visit as well. There's usually not that much warning, is there?
No, and it's really hard to help you out after, to help you send MIFUs for outside of Maxill's umbrella. We'd be happy to help you out any way we can, but at short notice, if you don't have a MIFU, you really shouldn't be practicing that way.
And depending on the size of your office, if you are in the SOS stance and you need some assistance, nice thing is that, of course, yes, we do have the library built up. However, if it's a small office that needs a few things, obviously much easier time-wise to collect. If it's a large office and they're coming in 6 hours, we've had that too, where offices call and the warning is a 6-hour window. Could be the next day. but that's a lot of work to do. So we want to make sure people realize the impact, the vast, I'm going to say, concern that it is, and that you're not left in that scenario, because there's nothing worse than the panic of that. And then how long would you be shut down? You'd be shut down as long as it takes to gather these MIFUs. So can you imagine all the instruments in your practice that would have to be scanned? So it's nice to do this task now. Break it down into the departments, right? It doesn't have to happen all tomorrow. The quicker the better. Once you have that in place, then you're fine. And what Nicole and I have noticed is that an inspection were to happen, they ask about the MIFUs. If you have a MIFU binder, the fact that you even have a MIFU binder, or let's back up, the fact that you even know what MIFUs stand for is going to be quite helpful, right?
Yes, it's a completely different stand, like I said, than an SDS. As long as you can understand the difference between safety data sheets or material safety data sheets and manufacturer's instructions for use.
And it does make sense when we look at certain products we use. One of the calls we were getting back in 2017, when a lot of the changes came about in Ontario, was what is the MIFUs for cheek retractors, plastic cheek retractors, and that does make sense. So obviously I don't think anybody wants to melt their cheek retractors, so they would want to know totally what is that temperature. So not only is it for the fact that we don't want a fear factor that you're going to get an audit, you obviously don't want to ruin your equipment, right? And we've all had that where we see the plastic melted in the tray. And I believe that from the organization piece, it would bring you peace of mind, not knowing that you're stuck in that dilemma, and to know that Maxill does actually have a full IPAC department that has not taken this task lightly. So the research is ongoing as new equipment comes up, and it's a supportive service as well. So we're not giving you your MIFUs and saying goodbye. We're saying once you get new equipment and you don't know the MIFU, somebody maybe did not gather it, it ended up in the garbage, we're here to help. Anything to add?
So yes, if you have any questions for IPAC, we'd be here at Maxill, happy to help you out with either a complete review, a combination of a review and a manual, or if you just need help with guiding you through the right steps for your manual, we'd be happy to help you out.
Thank you for joining Maxill's Reality Corner. We'll see you soon.